Under the oak tree. Sunlight streamed in through the windows, casting golden rays on the crimson carpet. Riftan, who had been striding across the great hall, suddenly turned to look back at Maxi. "I haven't told you yet how magnificent the castle looks. Rodrigo tells me you worked day and night." Maxi blushed at the sudden compliment. "Do you like it?" "Of course. When I went downstairs in the morning, I thought I'd woken up in someone else's castle." Maxi breathed a sigh of relief. "You didn't say anything, so I was worried. I couldn't stop in the middle of my outburst to sing the praises of the castle's splendor now, could I? Besides, I'd just seen you in grave danger. How could I have noticed anything else? You could have gilded these walls with pure gold, and I still wouldn't have noticed." Seeing his eyes glint in anger at the memory, Maxi cast her eyes down. Riftan let out a short sigh and stroked her hair to soothe her. "But that's all in the past now. Let's go see your gifts." Maxi nodded and followed him up the stairs to their bedchamber, where servants were busy arranging a pile of wooden chests. Maxi couldn't believe her eyes. Though she was used to seeing Rosetta surrounded by gifts, she had never been the recipient of such treasures. "Is all of this for me? Is it not to your liking?" Maxi quickly shook her head. If she, a duke's daughter, let on that she found such extravagant gifts overwhelming, Riftan would find it suspicious. Rosetta had never batted an eyelid at chests full of priceless jewels. Remembering her half-sister's haughty demeanor, Maxi tried her best to stay composed. "No, I like them." Riftan looked relieved. He instructed the servants to open the remaining chests, and Maxi tried her best to play the part of a noblewoman accustomed to such luxuries. It was impossible, however, to stop her jaw from dropping. Riftan picked up an emerald hairpin and carefully slid it into her hair, just above her ear. Next, he clasped a sparkling diamond necklace around her neck. Seeing Maxi's astonishment at the sumptuous jewels, Riftan softly kissed her cheek with a satisfied grin. "I knew they would suit you perfectly. Thank you." Maxi's cheeks burned, and Riftan's eyes glowed with pleasure. Brushing a lock of hair behind her ear, he urged her to try on the rest of the jewelry. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, Maxi felt both delight and unease. Riftan was treating her like a royal princess, yet she felt closer to a jester performing under an ill-fitting mask. Riftan frowned at her troubled expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Maxi quickly put a smile on her face. "These are beautiful. You must have been so busy in Drakium. How did you find the time?" "You had to leave all your belongings behind at Calypse Castle because of me. It's only right that I make up for it." "Thank you." Maxi forced another smile, trying to hide her dismay. Her heart felt as if it had been stung. Riftan seemed to relax, and he began instructing the servants to put away the gifts. Maxi looked on from the back of the room, struggling to shake the strange sense of guilt. She told herself that she hadn't lied, that Riftan had simply assumed she was worthy of such indulgence. But such reasoning did little to ease her mind. Maxi went to the kitchen to oversee food preservation for the winter. Late autumn to early winter was the busiest time of year at any castle. When the weather grew colder, fresh vegetables became scarce, and the price of meat increased many-fold. Servants tirelessly cured meat, pickled fruit, smoked sausages, and carted copious bags of flour from the mill. If they had any time to spare, it was spent preparing winter fodder for the livestock. Maxi listened to Lydia's explanation as she scanned the kitchen, the smell of oil permeating the room. "It's difficult to find enough grass to feed all the animals during winter, so we keep a fixed number and slaughter the rest. Butchers prepare the meat and entrails to be sent to the castle, where the meat is smoked and the entrails used for sausages." Maxi nodded. The kitchen was always busy, but for the past few days, it had become a battlefield. On one side of the room, servants were busy stuffing sausages at a long table, wash basins and plates piled high next to them. On the opposite end of the room, other servants were sawing meat into small pieces. "My lady," a cheerful voice interrupted Maxi. She turned to see who it was, and her eyes widened when she saw 6 squires standing next to the braziers with sweat running down their foreheads. Elysian, who was at the head of the group, quickly made his way toward her. "I heard what happened, my lady. Is it all right for you to be walking around already? Those damned bastards. How dare they? I'm fine." Garrow sighed, noticing Maxi's discomfort at the sudden outpouring of concern. "Calm down, Yuli. You're making her ladyship uncomfortable. I've just never been so frustrated about being a squire before. If I were a knight, I could've." Seeing Elysian's crestfallen face, Maxi stifled a laugh. He reminded her of a large dog with its ears tucked back. "Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine, really." Some of the guards were injured, but Sir Riftan arrived just in time. "Yes, so I heard. And I heard those cowards surrendered immediately when they saw him. I can't blame them. Those gutless scoundrels don't stand a chance against Sir Riftan." Maxi rolled her eyes. Garrow had already started to shake his head. Once Yuli began singing Riftan's praises, he didn't know when to stop. With a forced smile, Maxi gently cut him off. "What brings you to the kitchen?" Elysian looked at the squires standing around behind him as if he had just remembered where he was. The smell of meat was too tempting, so we sneaked out of practice. That must be why they looked so nervous. Maxi smiled as if to reassure them that their secret was safe. "We were just cooking up some sausages." She turned to the cook. "Would you serve them some?" The cook looked up and grinned. "I'll have a few ready in a jiffy, my lady." "You there, go bring me a plate of sausages." The squires eagerly gathered around, and Maxi slipped out of the kitchen to let them enjoy their snack in peace. After making the rounds at the stables, Maxi returned to her room to record a log of the day's deeds. To manage a castle as large as Calypse Castle, keeping track of every detail was essential. "My lady, the Lord has sent word that he'll be late and that you should dine without him. Would you like your meal in the dining hall?" Maxi looked up from her writing when she heard Luddy's voice. She had not noticed the maidservant enter. Wondering how long she had been at her desk, Maxi looked out the window. Darkness had already fallen. Was Riftan still working at that hour? Though he was a strong man, she couldn't help but worry that he was not getting adequate rest. "My lady, I'll eat in my room." Maxi rose from her seat. A day in Calypse Castle felt both infinitely long and incredibly short. Managing the place was exhausting, but she was in much higher spirits than she had ever been at her father's castle. She absent-mindedly poked at the logs in the fireplace and stared into the flames. "Is Riftan happy with me too?" Maxi's face fell as she remembered Ruth's words from that morning. It was clear from the way the knights treated her how unjustly they thought Riftan had been treated by her father. She would not have blamed him for resenting her, but he had been unfailingly kind to her. Maxi could not comprehend his kindness. As far as she could tell, there was nothing the least bit appealing about her. She possessed neither striking beauty nor exceptional talent, nor had she been endowed with sharp wit. The one thing she had was her standing as a duke's daughter, but her lineage could not hold a candle to that of a royal princess. It was impossible to know what it was that Riftan saw in her. Whatever the reason, her father had been right when he had said that she was fortunate beyond what she deserved. Her father's cruel violence had unexpectedly turned into a blessing. Maxi swore to herself that she would do everything in her power to hold onto her good fortune. A firm hand gently cupped Maxi's chest over her dress. She awoke to see the faint light of dawn filtering in through the windows. She had fallen asleep after supper while reading in bed. She was drawing the blankets over her shoulders to ward off the morning chill when a powerful arm snaked around her waist. Startled, she turned to look behind her. Riftan was fast asleep, his bare chest exposed. Wondering when he had returned, she peered at his face with suspicion. Was he pretending to be asleep again? Maxi narrowed her eyes, on alert for any sign of movement. But Riftan continued to breathe softly. Convinced that he was genuinely asleep, she gently pushed his arm away. To her surprise, he released her. Maxi turned toward him as quietly as she could. Though Riftan usually woke at the slightest noise, he remained sound asleep. The sight warmed her heart. He must be exhausted. Riftan's face was bathed in the bluish glow of dawn. Maxi gently traced its outline with her hand. His hair had grown longer and now sat over his fine forehead in a tousled mess, pricking his eyes. Seeing the slight frown on his face, Maxi brushed back the strands, and the frown disappeared. She smiled at the sight of him sleeping sweetly. Maxi continued to look at him adoringly, though he was at least a cavet, about 30 centimeters, taller than her and twice her size. On impulse, she crawled into his arms and put her head against his chest. Seeing that he was still deeply asleep, she felt the urge to do something more daring. She buried her face in his neck and took in his warm masculine scent, which reminded her of sunlight mingled with the fragrance of the soap. As she drank in the inexplicably sensual scent, heat rose inside her belly. Maxi followed the outline of Riftan's jaw with her finger. He was truly a stunning man. Even in the dark, his smooth skin gleamed like gold, and with his long lashes lowered, he looked as innocent as a lamb. Something must be wrong with me. Just a few months prior, she would never have thought to describe this rugged knight as innocent. But now, she was overcome by a strange desire to embrace him and rub her face against him. She suppressed the urge. She not only lacked the courage, but she was also loath to disturb his much-needed rest. Maxi slid out of bed and left the room with her robe in hand. She draped the thick robe over her thin woolen dress and made her way to the kitchen. The crisp morning air chilled the corridor. When she arrived, there was a warmth in the air. The cook dropped the dough he had been kneading and rushed forward to greet Maxi. "My lady, what brings you to the kitchen so early in the morning?" Maxi gave him an awkward smile as she made her way to the fireplace. "I woke up early, and I left the room so as not to disturb the lord. Is it all right if I stay here?" The cook seemed flustered that the lady of the castle would ask such a thing. He nodded so vigorously that Maxi worried his head might come loose. "Of course. We've just finished baking bread and making rabbit stew. Would you like to have your breakfast now, my lady?" "Yes, please." A few moments later, a maidservant placed a loaf of freshly baked white bread and a bowl of thick stew in front of her. Maxi broke the warm bread in half. Steam rose from the soft, moist crumb. Maxi placed a pat of butter on a piece of bread, blew on it a few times, and took a bite. The sweet bread melted in her mouth. Just as she was thinking about returning to bed, Ruth shuffled into the kitchen. "Why, you're up early today, my lady." Maxi's face fell in dismay. Ruth quickly made his way to her as if to stop her from escaping. "I see you're enjoying an early breakfast. That must be nice. I, on the other hand, haven't had a single bite since dinner last night thanks to the special task Sir Riftan assigned to me." Maxi gave him a stiff smile. "I was busy yesterday. Yes, I heard about the veritable mountain of gifts Sir Riftan brought you. Were you busy opening gifts all day?" "There are more matters in the castle that require my attention than you think." Maxi had in fact spent much of the previous day opening gifts, but she decided not to disclose the fact. The sorcerer stared down at her with cheerless eyes. She did not wish to be browbeaten before the servants, but Ruth's domineering attitude had a way of making her feel like an inept student being scolded by her tutor. "I understand, but making winter preparations is also important. I'll help you as soon as I'm finished. The safety of Anatolians takes precedence over all else for Sir Riftan. If I can complete the device with your help, his worries will be greatly alleviated." Maxi's ears pricked up and her eyes brightened. "Would it really?" "Certainly, my lady." Excited by the chance to prove herself to Riftan, Maxi hardly took notice of the fact that Ruth had artfully chosen just the words that were needed to convince her. "If that's the case, I'll help you first. Are you satisfied? I'd be happier if you could start right away." Ruth ran a hand over his haggard face. "I have a heap of equations that needs to be sorted out. Making a magical device usually requires the help of 2 to 3 assistants." "I understand. Why don't you have something to eat first? This will do." Ruth picked up a loaf of freshly baked bread and bit into it. He then took an apple from a sack in the kitchen corner and thrust it inside the pocket of his robe before shuffling toward the door. Maxi followed after instructing Liddies to come find her in the library if anything happened. Ruth had not been exaggerating about the volume of work that awaited him. Maxi's jaw dropped when she saw the mess he had made of a library in just 2 days. Haphazardly stacked books, pieces of parchment, and other odds and ends cluttered the desk. Maxi leaned forward to inspect a piece of cloth that lay spread out on the floor. The size of a blanket, it was inscribed with complex, meticulously drawn patterns. She sighed when she saw the empty ink bottles scattered across the floor. Ruth appeared to have used 5 whole bottles to draw the patterns. "Why are you working here instead of your tower?" "There isn't enough room. And Sir Riftan has made it clear that the tower will no longer be mine if I don't finish this device within a week." Maxi frowned as she thought about the lofty tower located in the back garden. How could Ruth possibly have run out of space? Surely he wasn't sleeping in the library because he lacked room in the tower? Ruth seemed not to notice her disapproving look as he sat down and placed his half-eaten apple on the edge of the desk. Maxi grudgingly took the seat across from him. "Your task, my lady, is quite simple. I'd like you to draw copies of these diagrams using these tools. I'll explain how to use them, of course. They should be easy to use as long as you know basic arithmetic." Ruth handed her 6 flat wooden boards of varying shapes. Gripping the boards in her hands, Maxi looked down at the intricate diagram. Piles of parchment with similar diagrams were stacked on top of the desk. "What are all these?" "Designs for the magical device." "Are magical devices enormous?" "They vary in size, but the one we're making is about the size of a pumpkin. These are blueprints for magic runes that will be placed inside the device. The runes will be placed in intricate layers inside an object endowed with protective magic." Magic runes. Maxi studied the diagram with interest. Circles, triangles, squares, and spirals were intricately intertwined on yellow parchment. When Ruth had asked for her assistance, she had guessed that the magical device would require complex calculations, but she now realized that the process was far more complicated than she had thought. Magic runes are tools that allow us to amplify the mana in our surroundings tenfold or even 100-fold. That's how all magic is created. A mage's talent is determined by how efficiently they use these runes to create the desired effect. Maxi tilted her head. "But I've seen mages use magic without runes before. Even you recently cast a spell without one." "That's possible only when we've memorized the spell so well that we can draw the runes in our heads. But only basic spells can be used this way. Advanced spells take a great deal of time and effort to prepare. Then what we're making must be extremely advanced magic." Maxi eyed the heap of parchment. Ruth nodded with a grin. "What we're making is called a gnome shield. It's a protective rune that uses earth magic. If someone were to attack the gates using magic, the rune would create a powerful barrier about 20 cuvets in radius as soon as it detected the attack. Once we place the runes inside the magical device and install it at the gates, even a rain of fire won't be able to destroy it." That's reassuring. Maxi's interest was piqued. She had rarely had the chance to see magic in use with the exception of the hierarch's healing magic and the defensive magic that Ruth had employed at the gates. She had heard tales of great mages and their brilliant exploits, but she knew little about how they wielded such magic. "Does that mean you can use magic if you know how to draw these runes?" "The runes won't work if you can't activate them with magic, and for that, you'd have to know how to control mana. Magic isn't something you can create from nothing, but something you must harness." "But I've seen ordinary people use magical devices." "That's because they have magic stones." Ruth rummaged through the cluttered desk and pulled out a glimmering red stone the size of Maxi's palm. This stone contains a fixed amount of magic and functions as an energy source for magical devices. By placing one inside a device, ordinary people can use magic. Maxi studied the stone. Its surface shimmered mystically, like red light reflected on rippling water. Holding the stone in her hands, she felt as if she had been given a glimpse into a strange, new world. Her heart began to beat faster. "Now, if that satisfied your curiosity, shall we get started? If we don't finish this soon, I shall lose my tower." Ruth shoved a pile of books to one side to make room on the desk. Maxi set the stone down and listened attentively as he explained step by step how to make calculations and how to draw the complex designs. With Ruth's detailed directions, Maxi quickly grasped the task at hand, methodically adding and subtracting as she redrew the diagrams with a ruler. Though it was a complex task that she could not fully comprehend, she never found the work tiresome. They worked in silence. After a while, Ruth looked up from writing in the ancient language and raised his eyebrows. "You're better at this than I expected, my lady. It's close to perfect, I'd say." Unsure of whether this was a compliment, Maxi narrowed her eyes. "Even I can do this much." "I just meant that you've exceeded my expectations." Maxi looked at him distrustfully. She knew how little the sorcerer thought of her. Still, she was relieved that he was not berating her as she had feared he would. "I'm glad you find me helpful." Maxi continued to work on the heap of parchment with a faint smile. Just as her fingers began to ache from gripping the quill, the library door burst open. She turned to see Riftan striding toward them. Her eyes widened when she saw that he was clad in leather trousers and a black tunic instead of his armor, a sign that he did not intend to leave the castle that day. She had half risen from her seat to joyfully greet him when she heard his icy voice. "The servants tell me you've been here since early this morning. What do you think you're doing here?" Riftan ran his eyes over the piles of books and parchment on the desk. The displeasure on his face puzzled Maxi. "What's all this about?" Ruth seemed unfazed. "Isn't it obvious? Her ladyship and I are making the device you requested. What I want to know is what my wife is doing here. I've asked her ladyship for her assistance. If you recall, I informed you countless times that it was nigh impossible to finish the device by myself within a week." Riftan leaned over the desk until he was looming over the sorcerer. "Are you trying to get back at me by ordering my wife around? I didn't ask for her ladyship's help just to annoy you. She happens to be the only literate person in this castle who can also do arithmetic. It's not as if I could ask the knights for help now, could I? But you think it's acceptable to ask my wife?" "Riftan, I really don't mind," Maxi quickly cut in. Trying to keep her voice even, she continued, "It's not difficult, and more importantly, it's for Anatole. I don't want something similar to happen again." Riftan gave her a sharp look, making Maxi's shoulders quiver. "I'll make sure it never happens again." Though Riftan's voice was now softer, he still looked irritated. "But there's no need for you to put yourself in danger." "And what danger could she possibly be in? Are you afraid she'll die from the prick of a quill? You're prone to starting fires with the flick of a hand. And why are you here instead of your tower? What if you start a fire? What I'm making is a protective device. The chances of an explosion or a fire starting are slim to none. The worst that could happen is that the library becomes safer." Riftan scowled, irked that he had no further arguments to make. Maxi gently tugged at his tunic. She knew that the best way to stop two hounds from fighting was to separate them. "Please don't be angry. Ruth says it's safe." "I'm not angry, just worried."
Riftan sighed. "Fine.
Help him if you must, but don't overexert yourself. And Ruth, don't you even think about involving my wife in dangerous experiments. Just what kind of person do you think I am? A loose cannon." With that, Riftan pulled Maxi toward him. In the past, a frown from him had been enough to terrify her. But strangely, she now felt no fear at the fact that a large, angry man was pulling at her arm. His displeasure still made her anxious, but she knew that he would not hurt her. "That's enough for today," said Riftan, leading Maxi toward the door. "You can carry on your own for the rest of the day." Ruth quickly rose from his seat. "Where are you going without your armor?" "Nowhere. Even I need days of rest from time to time." Maxi's eyes went round. Seeing the same surprise on Ruth's face, she surmised that Riftan rarely took rest. "We'll need something warmer before we go out. It's a fine day, but the wind's chilly." "Where are we going?" "You have your own horse now. You should take her out before it gets too cold. I'll show you a good place to ride." Maxi's lips parted in surprise. She was pleased that he wanted to spend time with her outside the bedchamber. "But you must be tired. Maybe you should rest." "I'm not an old man, Maxi, but if you insist on spending time in the bedroom." Maxi caught her breath when she saw the desire in his eyes. Her face burning, she cast her eyes down. Riftan laughed softly and pulled her into a firm embrace. It's tempting, but we're going out today. I want to show you my land. After changing into a dress more suited to riding, Maxi followed Riftan to the stables. You remember Talon, don't you? Aside from his fiery temper, he's as perfect a horse as you could wish for, Riftan said while gently stroked the horse's neck. Do you like horses? I've dreamt of having one ever since I was a boy of 10. And Talon here is the best among all the horses I've had. Riftan rubbed his cheek against Talon's muzzle. The sight suddenly filled Maxi with jealousy. She turned away, mortified that she was jealous of a mere beast. According to the teachings of the church, nothing was more shameful than a woman's jealousy. Riftan stepped toward her. Have you given her a name? Maxi shook her head, trying to rein back her emotions. Not yet. You should choose one soon. She'll warm up to you faster if you call her by her name. What should I name her? It's your horse. You should be the one to decide. After mulling it over, Maxi said, Rem. Riftan smiled playfully. Rem, because she's white? I see that my wife's imagination is wanting. It has a nice ring to it. Maxi did not mention that the inspiration for the name had come from the order of knights under his command. Just then, a groom came to saddle the horses, and Riftan helped her onto her horse. Still unused to being on horseback, her body stiffened reflexively. She clutched the reins nervously. Riftan, on the other hand, looked perfectly at ease on Talon. Riftan stared at her awkward posture. You're not used to riding, are you? Maxi nodded, embarrassed. I never left Calypse Castle. There wasn't much chance for me to ride. I know. I heard the rumors. It was said that the Duke of Calypse's eldest daughter avoided the outside world because of her delicate disposition. Something in his voice made Maxi nervous. I didn't know that was how people perceived me. The Duke of Calypse is one of the most powerful men in the Western continent. It's only natural for people to take an interest in his daughter. And unlike your sister, you never made any public appearances, which only served to inflate their curiosity. I know of a knight who sneaked into Calypse Castle just to catch a glimpse of you. She had been entirely unaware of such curiosity. How had Riftan pictured her after he had heard those rumors? Had he imagined a frail woman, delicate as a flower? She knew that there was nothing elegant about her short, thin frame. Tender-hearted and easily frightened, she also knew that such traits failed to make her endearing. Maxi avoided his gaze. He must have been disappointed, Maxi said brightly, trying to mask her self-doubt. How so? Riftan turned to look at her, frowning. He went through all that trouble just to see an ordinary-looking woman. Maxi tightened her grip on the reins as she tried to feign nonchalance. Calling her looks ordinary was generous, but she did not want to go so far as to admit that to Riftan. Her ears turned red. Riftan slowed down to ride by her side as they made their way toward the back gate. I have to disagree. I find you charming. Maxi smiled awkwardly, certain that he was only being polite. Thank you. Riftan frowned. It's not my habit to say things that I don't mean. If I didn't find you alluring, you wouldn't drive me into a frenzy when we're alone together. Or had you forgotten because we had one peaceful night yesterday? Maxi's whole body flushed with embarrassment. At a loss for words, she opened and closed her mouth repeatedly. Riftan leaned in closer and cupped her chin with his hand. Her heart began to pound when she saw the desire in his eyes. Perhaps riding was a foolish suggestion. Shall we turn back? Maxi shook her head, and Riftan straightened his back with an inscrutable expression. She could not tell whether he was smiling or frowning. Pity, then let us hurry. We don't want the sun to set before we've even left the castle. Maxi trailed after him, trying to calm her racing heart. They rode through a narrow forest path that led out of the back gate. The only sounds were the rustling and crunching of leaves and the chirping of the birds in the sky. It seemed as if the whole world were asleep. Maxi observed Riftan as they rode in peaceful silence. He looked gracefully at ease atop his horse. She, on the other hand, had to bend forward and clumsily grip the reins to keep herself from falling. Riftan looked back at her and smiled wryly. I didn't know my wife was such an unpracticed rider. As I mentioned, I had few opportunities to ride. Relax your shoulders. Horses get nervous when they sense their riders are tense. Blushing, Maxi took deep breaths and tried to loosen her shoulders. But each time the horse moved, her hips bounced, and she felt her body constrict once more. After observing her for a few moments, Riftan brought his horse closer to hers. Relax your upper body. Squeeze your thighs to the rhythm of the horse's movement for balance, just like when you were on top of me. Riftan, you mustn't say such things out loud.
Why?
It's just us here. Still, it's improper. Riftan burst into laughter. Heavens, I haven't the least idea why you're getting so upset. In bed, you were so... Riftan. Maxi lost her balance as she attempted to cover his mouth, but Riftan swiftly caught her as if he had anticipated her fall. All right, calm down. Maxi glared at Riftan, who looked back at her mischievously before leaning down to kiss her forehead. Maxi lost her balance a second time, prompting Riftan to steady her again. Looks like I'll have to teach you the foundations, starting with how to sit on a horse. Riftan laughed. I'd be able to ride better if you'd just stop distracting me, Maxi muttered. Riftan's grin only grew wider. Maxi tried to maintain her haughty demeanor, but she found it difficult to look indignant when she saw his mischievous charm. Each time he smiled, her cheeks went red, and her heart began to beat faster. Is that so?
So, be it then.
Riftan galloped ahead, steering the powerful stallion with ease with his long, muscular legs. Before long, Maxi realized that he was riding at a pace slow enough that she could catch up. She knew that he was capable of riding like the wind as he had done on his return from Drakium, so this small gesture made her heart swell. No one in her life had cared for her as he had done. She could almost believe that he really did see her as attractive and a good wife. You're not accustomed to riding, but you like animals, don't you? Maxi blinked. How did you know? I once saw you sitting in the garden of Calypse Castle during one of my visits. You were petting a cat you had on your lap. Maxi was startled. It had never occurred to her that someone might have been watching her. She tried to recall if she had ever seen Riftan in the garden. He was purring away blissfully. I remember it well, because everything was so soft and serene. It was probably the kitchen cat that was kept for catching mice. He was often starved because he wasn't a good hunter, so I'd feed him in secret. So, he was trying to repay you the favor by being adorable. Riftan looked deep in thought for a moment. Suddenly, he glanced over his shoulder to look at her. What else do you like? Riftan asked as he moved the branches that might get in the way. Seeing the puzzled look on her face, he smiled bitterly. I've said it before, but you're veiled in mystery. It's rare that you reveal anything about yourself. Why are you so reluctant to show me who you are? Maxi felt her heart drop. Did he not know the answer to his question? Was he truly blind to her impediment? The way Riftan treated her was so starkly different from her father's cruelty that she was no longer sure of how she should perceive herself. I've never been reluctant.
I just wasn't asked about things.
Fair enough. Then tell me about what you like, what you don't, and what you think about every day. Why don't you go first? You don't talk much about yourself either. I'm certain I've said more about myself than you have. He knitted his brows as if he were combing through his memories, then shrugged. Very well. Allow me to show you some chivalry. I like horses, wine, and rich food. As a matter of fact, I like anything that fills the belly and pleases the tongue. Other than that, it's gold, jewels, honor, and powerful weapons. Nothing that an ordinary man wouldn't like. What do you detest? Liars and incompetent fools. I've seen too much pompous scum in this world who flaunt their unmerited stations. They're outnumbered only by riffraff who deceive others for profit. Though she knew his words were not directed at her, Maxi felt a chill run through her body. Now it's your turn, said Riftan. Maxi tried to mask her anxiety. Riftan seemed oblivious to her agitation. I like what most people like, too. That's not a fair answer. Give me a proper one. Maxi thought for a moment before speaking again. As I've said before, I like animals. Dogs, cats, horses, chicks, and rabbits too. What else? I like to read. At Calypse Castle, I spent most of my time in the library. Rodrigo did mention that you spend a good deal of your time here in the library.
Yes.
There's so many rare books here, though Ruth tends to use them as his blanket. Shall I drive the rascal out of there? I would never hear the end of it if you did. A line creased Riftan's forehead when he saw Maxi's look of horror. He gave her a cryptic look. It seems you two have been getting along well. He helped me greatly with the refurbishments. He's fussy and he nags, but he's a good person. Her response only seemed to irritate Riftan. He turned to face away from her. You're right. He's fussy and talks too much, but he's an upright fellow. He rode in silence, lost in thought. What do you hate then? You'll need to answer that for this to be a fair exchange. Lashings, shouting, and beatings were the first things that came to mind, but Maxi could not reveal that. Still, she did not want to lie to a man who had said he most detested liars. She hesitated before blurting out an answer. Myself. Riftan blinked as if he had not understood. What? I hate myself the most, Maxi repeated. Riftan was frozen in place, unable to react. Just then, they reached the end of the path, and a vast meadow came into view. Before Riftan could press her further, Maxi spurred her horse into a gallop up the hill.